Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is another true crime video. Today's case is on an unidentified serial killer named Bible John, who is believed to have murdered 3 young women between 1968 and 1969 in Glasgow. Unfortunately, I don't know if this case will ever be solved just due to the length of time and due to the deterioration of the DNA. So my heart really goes out to the victims and the victims' family in this case due to them not receiving any justice. But before I say anything else, let's get into this case. It was February 22nd, 1968, and a local nurse, Patricia Docker, planned a night out. Pat Docker lived quietly. She was living at home with her parents and her 4-year-old son, Sandy, at 27 Langside Place. That night, she attended a local club called the Majestic Ballroom. Sometime during this, she either changed her mind or became persuaded to move on to another club closer to downtown. This venue was a much more popular one for the clubbers of Glasgow. That evening, the Barrowland Ballroom was hosting an over-25s event that tended to attract partygoers from all over the city. That night, there was a man standing close by in his mid-20s, though he could have been slightly older. The unknown man and Docker ended up making some small talk and then dancing on the dance floor. A joiner leaving for work noticed a figure lying on the ground, just 2 streets over from Langside Place, where her parents lived. Patricia Docker's body was found half frozen between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. She had been assaulted and strangled. Following the discovery, an investigation began. However, it took detectives several days to establish that the victim had ended up at the Barrowland Ballroom. If the police made this breakthrough earlier, perhaps the investigation may have yielded better results. Upon the discovery of Docker's body, her bag and clothes were absent from the scene. The detectives assigned to follow up on the missing items worked for several months trying to discover where they were. These items later showed up in a river. For the next 18 months or so, police continued their work on their investigation. On the 15th of August 1969, the police's worst fears became reality. Another woman, 32-year-old mother of 3, Jemima MacDonald, disappeared after a night out at the Barrowland Ballroom. Jemima was seen during her night out on the dance floor with a man in a blue suit. The man was described as tall, with short, fair hair, and was aged in his late 20s to early 30s. Jemima was seen leaving the Barrowland Ballrooms with the same man, slowly strolling away into the night. It would be the last time Jemima would ever be seen alive. Jemima's sister, Margaret, was starting to become a little concerned the following morning as Jemima had failed to come and collect her children. As the day passed, Margaret overheard some of the children from the neighborhood talking about the body they had discovered in a derelict building on McKee Street. Margaret got directions from one of the local kids and made her way into the abandoned building. She made the discovery as she dreaded, and Margaret found the dead body of her sister Jemima. Like Patricia Docker, Jemima had been strangled, possibly with her own tights. Jemima, though, was not found naked. She was fully clothed, but her handbag was missing. Door-to-door inquiries found a possible witness to the murder, a local woman who remembered hearing screams coming from the same building. The police could not establish the time of these screams, and eventually the police realized they couldn't do much with the little information that they had. Jemima's siblings tried to do what they could, and even offered a cash reward for any information leading to the arrest. Again, this led to no real information. Police tried to reenact this scene to try and get somewhere with the investigation. They had dressed a female officer in similar clothing to which Jemima had worn on that night, and retraced her final known hours. Sadly, this once again failed to lead to any tangible suspect, and they wound down the investigation. Then, on the 31st of October, 1969, there was a third victim. 29-year-old Helen Puttock was found on Earl Street. Like the previous victims, she had spent time inside the Barrowland Ballroom. Perhaps due to the reputation that Barrowland may or may have not gotten over the previous months, Helen was not alone during her visit. Her husband George emphasized he was worried because of the killer that was going about. However, Helen said she would be fine and brought her sister Jean along with her. The girls split up soon after arriving at the Barrowland Ballroom, and a man approached Jean, and they began the usual awkward flirtation. His name was John, a builder from Castlemilk. They danced and had a drink together, then several more. Helen stood to the side, smoking and observing. Before long, she had her own partner, a man around 5'10", with reddish and a strange, slightly arcane elegance. He was also John. She didn't catch a surname. He was said to be handsome, sharp-featured, with 2 slightly overlapping front teeth. Jean said you noticed his accent. It's clipped, middle-class inflections. And Jeannie later reported saying that he wasn't the Barrowlands type. Many of those who used to go there were kind of rough or drunk, but he was very, very nice and polite and well-spoken. For over an hour, the four enjoyed each other's company. Castlemilk John got the bus home. He has never been traced, despite the urgency of police appeals. Helen, Bible John, and Jean took a taxi home. The taxi ride home proved crucial in the investigation. The ride provided what little information is available about the man. Helen's John spoke of adulterous women and the age-old sectarian violence of Celtic and Rangers. He also quoted his father, saying that dance halls are dens of iniquity. So this shows that he could have been raised in a very strict and religious household. To lighten things up, Jean asked, "What did you do for Hogmanay?" which is New Year's Eve. He said he didn't drink, but prayed. This is how Bible John got his nickname, as he mostly mentioned passages from the Bible. John insisted that Jean was dropped off first to her house in Yoker, before retreating back to Helen's in Scotstoun. Helen was found yards away from her home at 129 Earl Street the next morning. The same wounds, the same method, only this time a sanitary towel was tucked under her arm. Traces of semen was left on her clothes, and a bite mark was imprinted on her body. There was evidence of a struggle, and she had put up a fight. So I'm going to go over all the similarities in each victim. Patricia Docker, Jemima MacDonald, and Helen Puttock were all married. They had all been at the dance hall. They had all been spending the night away from their regular partner. Each victim had been menstruating, and they were all strangled and sexually assaulted. Another similarity is Patricia Docker and Helen Puttock. They were found in close proximity of their house. Bible John brought absolute panic to Glasgow. People thought they saw Bible John everywhere, in pubs, trains, and the streets. The killer could have been lurking anywhere. Things got so heavy that the police were soon handing out cards to men in the city, certifying that they weren't Bible John. The search scaled fast. 920 doctors and dentists were interviewed on the back of Jeannie's remembrance of the 2 overlapping teeth. Over 400 barbers and hairdressers were quizzed on the hope of finding the distinctive reddish hair. 260 tailors who may have sold the odd, slightly continental suit. And all of this, and there was nothing back. Jean also remembered John bragging about a hole-in-one. Now there's 2 different accounts. It was either John himself bragging about hitting a hole-in-one, or that his cousin was hitting a hole-in-one. But every golf club in the country submitted a list of those who had shot an ace. In all, 5,000 suspects were questioned before the gradual elimination to 0 in the first year of the inquiry alone. But Bible John had just disappeared after the murder of Helen Puttock. Jean remained the only confirmed eyewitness until her death in 2010. There was loads of scrutiny around the police, as many thought they focused way too much on Jeannie's account. So, who could Bible John be? There was new hope, given some 14 years later in 1983, a Glasgow man who used to attend the Barrowlands claimed he knew who the killer was, after only recently reading an article with a description and the police sketch of the man suspected of being Bible John. The man claimed that an old school friend he had grown up with and frequented the Barrowlands with was the killer, and he had eluded the police in the late 1960s. The man hired a private investigator to look for his former friend and was eventually tracked down. The suspect in questioning was now living in the Netherlands, and supposedly he was questioned about the murders. The suspect, however, was seemingly able to prove that he had nothing to do with the murders, and there was no further mention of the suspect or the man that suspected him. The second possible suspect, John M. It would be a further 13 years until police would reveal another suspect for the murders, and that this suspect had been on their radar all along. It was revealed in 1996 that a man known as John M. was a man that they had strongly suspected for being the man responsible for all 3 murders. He bore an uncanny resemblance to the man that police were looking for, and he was even shown to Jean during the original investigation. Despite her failure to pick out John M. as the man who shared a taxi with her and her sister Helen, he remained a person of interest in the eyes of the investigators, even after his suicide in 1980. Due to the advances in DNA technology, police tested the semen DNA against one of John M.'s siblings. Unfortunately for the police, these tests came back inconclusive. This is where stuff gets so bad. However, police held such a strong belief that he was their man. They took the step of requesting that the body of John M. be exhumed so they could take a direct sample for comparison. Police were given the permission that they had sought and went on to exhume the body of John M. Unfortunately, during this time, John M.'s real identity was leaked to the media, and suddenly it was this massive news throughout Scotland. The man's children and family were hounded by the media, and every little bit of dirt was dug up on John M. and his family, and was gleefully put in the press. The press basically declared John M. as Bible John, as if it was a matter of fact, and that nothing was going to change this opinion. The government had to issue an apology to the family of John M. for the pain, trauma, and suffering caused by this event. Jean also released a statement shortly after, saying that she had repeatedly told police that John M. was not the man that she had shared a taxi with, and he did not go on to kill his sister Helen, but the police ignored Jean. Suspect 3. 8 years would pass before Bible John murders hit the newspapers again. In December 2004, it was revealed that the DNA taken from a recent arrest was an 80% match to the semen DNA left on the clothing of Helen Puttock. The name was never released, probably due to what happened with the press with John M.'s identity. But it was believed that the man arrested wasn't himself a suspect, but the police strongly believed that someone in the individual's family may well have been Bible John. DNA samples from several family members were taken, but no suspects came of the testing and no arrest was ever made. Suspect 4. Peter Tobin. Bible John remains one of Scotland's most notorious unsolved serial killers, and as you've seen, plenty of names have been proposed as John's identity. But one of the latest, and quite possible the most logical, is Peter Tobin. In 2007, Peter Tobin was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Angelica Cluck in Glasgow in 2006. He was further convicted of 2 more murders, those of Vicky Hamilton and Dinah McNichol. Tobin spent time with Catholic priests and allegedly knew the Bible inside and out. He even worked in a church, and he went by many false names. His photograph and MO were of significant interest to Joe Jackson, one of the original investigators of the Bible John case. After setting up Operation Anagram to look into the movements and life of Tobin, several links were made to the Bible John murders. Tobin spent time at the Barrowland Ballrooms. One woman came forward to say that in 1968 she had met Tobin in that ballroom and he went on to assault her. And another woman came forward and also said that she remembered meeting Tobin in the Barrowland Ballroom as well, and he became aggressive and threatening towards her when she refused to leave the ballroom and go to a party elsewhere with him. Another very interesting point is Tobin met his first wife in the Barrowland Ballrooms, and in the same year that Bible John murders ended, Tobin allegedly relocated to Brighton soon after Helen's murder. So many people believe the reason why the Bible John killings stopped and the case went cold was because whilst Tobin was living in Brighton, he was incarcerated for a string of burglaries. Many people feel that the image of elderly Tobin is quite a close match to the identity of Bible John, but an image of the more youthful Tobin has convinced some that Tobin is 100% Bible John, and that the similarities are just too striking. Regrettably, due to poor storage, the police believe that the DNA samples will unlikely link to Tobin due to their deterioration. Jean, the sister of Helen, also dismissed Tobin, and she was adamant that he was not the man in the taxi. Some say Tobin's religious links are nothing more than a mere coincidence. The last suspect I'm going to talk about is a police officer. There's been a lot of theories that it could have definitely been a police officer or someone with a military background. In some reports, it says witnesses saw Bible John wearing this military-style watch. In the book Dancing with the Devil, the author, an ex-police officer, Paul Harrison, claims that he has evidence that Bible John was a serving police officer at the time of the murders. Although the author and former police officer Paul Harrison couldn't name his culprit publicly, he did reveal that the suspect was still alive during an interview in 2013. Harrison states that the officer in question was under investigation by Joe Beatty, the man in charge of the Bible John inquiry. However, Beatty was told to drop the investigation into the officer by those above him. The author also states in his book that Jean was certain that the man that she had shared a taxi with on that fateful night of her sister's murder was a police officer. Harrison also says that several witnesses from the Barrowland Ballrooms said that there was a man seen with the victim and he had been seen with a police ID badge. Bouncers at the Barrowland Ballroom have independently confirmed Jean's suspicions when a fight broke out involving a well-dressed man. This man produced a warrant card. The Bible John killings are still unsolved after 50+ years. Alright guys, that is the end of today's video. Let me know what you think of today's case. Have you heard of it before? And do you think it will ever be solved? Also, make sure to comment who you think Bible John is or could be.